We will call this meeting to order. Thank you all for being here with us this evening. Dr. Means, will you help us with the roll call?
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Beard.
Here.
Beckman.
Here.
Mr. Worthy.
Here.
Ms. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Bybee.
Here.
Dr. Gant.
Here.
Dr. Knotts.
Here.
Dr. Maddox.
Here. Thank you. Would you please stand and join with us in silent meditation and then the pledge of allegiance? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda tonight is a recognition of achievements and awards.
Good evening, Mr. President, Superintendent Means, board members. We are delighted to recognize many students again this week, as we did 2 weeks ago. This week, the abundance is for fine arts recognitions, but we have a few others prior to that group being recognized. Our March Better Every Day Award will go this month to Ms. Phyllis Childs. Ms. Childs is an ESOL teacher at Barrow Elementary School. She was nominated for her commitment to the Barrow Elementary community. She helps the families who come from other countries feel comfortable and part of the school community. She serves over 40 students throughout the school and is there to help each and every one. Ms. Childs goes above and beyond what should be expected to support students and the teachers serving English language learners. Congratulations. Now we will move into our student winners. Students, as your names are called, we ask that you come up, receive your certificate and shake hands with Dr. Means and our board members. We will begin with Mr. Walter Avila from Cedar Shoals. Walter has been selected as a 2019 Quest Bridge Scholar and has been awarded a full ride to Emory University in the fall. 248 applicants nationwide. He was one of 1,044 students that was matched with the university. Over the course of 4 years, the scholarship Walter has received will amount to $300,000. He is also a semifinalist for the very selective Jack Kent Cook Foundation Scholarship, making him eligible for another 4-year renewable $40,000 scholarship. This is a great accomplishment for Walter and speaks volumes about Cedar Shoals and the teachers and staff that have guided him throughout his education here. Congratulations. Teacher Marco Masori is loved by his Overthorpe Avenue Elementary School family, students, staff, and parents. He has a winning sense of humor and is adored by all lucky enough to work with and alongside him. Last week, Mr. Masori noted, and now it's been about 2 weeks ago, one of his students in distress had jumped in to provide life-saving assistance. While sitting with his students during lunch, one of his scholars began to choke on food. The child was unable to breathe, was making no sounds, and began to turn red. Mr. Masori, noticing the student's level of distress, jumped into action, ran to the student, and performed the Heimlich maneuver. This dislodged the food, and the student began to cough and to breathe once again. The school nurse followed up immediately. Mom was contacted, and the child was transported to the doctor to ensure that all was clear. Things would not have gone so well had it not been for Mr. Masori's awareness of his scholars and being prepared to be able to take appropriate action, and the work of the amazing school nurse. So we thank you for helping to make Clark County better. Has been selected as one of Georgia's STEM scholars by Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers for his outstanding efforts to engage and improve student learning in STEM disciplines. As part of this special recognition, Clark County Schools will receive a $500 grant from Mr. Subuchi to purchase STEM education materials for his classroom. He will also be honored at a celebration in Atlanta on Saturday, March 23rd. Congratulations. These students attended an intense and rigorous math league competition on Saturday, March 2nd in Forsyth County, Georgia. These 16 students were tested on number sense, critical thinking, problem solving, and team collaboration. Many of the test items were middle school and high school math content. Zydrick, I hope I said that right, Faust ranked 19 out of 250 test participants in the sprint round. And as a result, he qualifies for the next round at the state level in late April or early May. The 5th grade teacher, Ms. Jones Stevens, started the accelerated PSP as a means of supplementing high-level instruction during the school day with a relaxed and fun after-school program. And these students are Esperanza Rango, Jesus Espinoza, Layla Bolton, please comment if you're here, so call your name, Stephanie Emiguam, Elijah Eccles, Brian Esteban, Oscar Laura, Kwan Luke, DR Martinez, Alessandra Perez, Luis Rodriguez, Zydrick Faust, who is moving on to the next level, Yalen Maya, Patricia Rodriguez, Jose Vilas, and Joshua Villanueva. Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for helping to make math better every day for our students. As they're finishing our fine arts Missions will be next, so if you're one of those students, you can prepare for your name call. I think we have like 6 pages of students recognized at the region or state level for their fine arts participation. So as soon as they finish, we will recognize our fine arts students next. If you want to, Ms. Stevens, you can go ahead and shake hands and then you can give it back. Is that all? Is that everyone?
Yes, that's all.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, beginning with Cedar Shores High School, fine arts recognitions. Alex Holland. Ms. Alex? Coming up, he was Georgia Music Educators Association District 14 Honor Band, UGA January High School. You can go ahead, Alex. High School Music Festival Honor Band, Georgia Music Educators Association All-State Band. Aubrey Crook. Aubrey is Georgia Music Educators Association District 14 Honor Band and UGA January High School Music Festival Honor Band. Bennett Coughlin. Bennett is UGA January High School Music Festival Honor Band. Dennis Madonda. Enoch Madonda, thank you. Georgia Music Educators Association District 14, thank you. Honor Band, UGA January High School Music Festival Honor Band, Georgia Music Educators Association All-State Band. Jackson Camp. Okay. Lorelei Crook. Lorelei Crook. Okay, she's gonna receive for her? All right, Georgia Music Educators Association District 14 Honor Band and UGA January High School Music Festival Honor Band. Mitch Bowden. Miles Camp. William Fain. All right, Clark Central High School, Anna Blum. Avery Ray. Bria Eccles. Caleb Burse. Claire, oh, thank you, sorry, Caleb. University of Georgia High School Music Festival Honor Band. Claire Whistler. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Claire. Georgia Art Education Association's All-State Art Symposium artwork featured on the cover of the National Art Society News. Clayton Dodson. Clayton Georgia Music Educators Association District 14 Honor Band. Corbin Chavis. Edmund Davis. Elizabeth Gaskell. Okay, Elizabeth is here. She's UGA January High School Festival. Elizabeth Scott. Graham Dotson. Jamia Hong. John Toma. John is UGA January High School Festival. Joni Woods. Jordan Racer. Jordan is UGA January High School Festival. Joseph Esifu Ansah. Caleb Hubbard. Artwork featured in the National Art Society News. Kiara Robles Ventura. Kyra Thomas. Letta Veeder. Luke Crone. Maggie DeMaria. Here comes Maggie. She's Georgia All-State Band. Melody Morgan. Michael Shannon. MICA, UGA January High School Festival, Georgia Music Educators Association, District 14 Honor Band. Sophie, Kayla, Caillou. Georgia Music Education Association All-State Orchestra and Honors Chamber Strings. Teresa McHugh. Durham Hong. That is here. Honors Chamber Strings. Thank you. From Hillsman Middle School, Anna Moorer. Ben Montgomery. Chloe Smith. Estelle Granlund. James Sal. Jane Michael. Jonathan Williams. Marcus Welch. Mason Hardy. Sam Michael. I think that is it. Is that all of them? Okay. Thank you all. And while our board members are standing, Dr. Means has certificates. This is Georgia School Board Appreciation Month. Week will be while we're on spring break, and so Dr. Means has some comments he would like to make.
So often during this portion of the board meeting, you are shaking people's hands for accomplishments. And I had a chance to share with our 3 new board members. We know we have 4 new board members, but I remember during the orientation I shared with Keisha and Kira and Tawana that running for public office is it's got to be the most difficult thing anyone will ever do. And when you do it at this level, it's very personal at times. It's part of the community. And when you run for the school board, you're doing it for the love of children. So we have a lot of meetings. You log a lot of time at meetings, all of you, all 9 of you. It's nice to say all 9 of you. And that's not counting the time that you put in talking with constituents and reading up and preparing. So on behalf of a very honored community, we appreciate your service. This is GSBA Board Appreciation Week. Community, you have a day or so to write emails of appreciation to the board. I think that will balance out some of the other emails that you see. So, I think we should do this in the way that you typically have to do it the other way. So, Dr. Francis Berry. Jared Bybee, JD. To shake your colleagues' right hands. I wanted Mr. Bybee to know that as an attorney, he also has a doctorate in the community. To know that as well. So, Mr. JD. Mr. Gray Davis. Ms. Linda Davis. Dr. Kara Dyke. Dr. Lakeisha Gams. Dr. John Knox. And Dr. Tawana Mannix.
They forgot the Dr. Means.
And Mr. Charles Worthy.
He's waiting for you. I'll just pick out Congratulations, good job. I appreciate it.
We are proud of our students and proud of their accomplishments and honored to be serving the students alongside their families. So thank you for all the hard work and effort we put into education, and especially your teachers and coaches and advisors all along the way. You're welcome to stick with us for the remainder of our meeting. If you have someplace to be, that's okay too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is our third meeting in 3 weeks.
Oh, we got one meeting, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Reeds, for that recognition. We have a fantastic board and very dedicated individuals, and it is my great pleasure to serve with you. Moving on to our agenda, the next item we need to do is to amend or adopt the agenda as it has been posted and reviewed by the board. Can I have a motion in that regard?
So move to accept the agenda, adopt the agenda.
Moved by Ms. Davis and second by Mr. Worthy. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Moving on to section D of our agenda, we have a number of individuals who have signed up to speak with us this evening. Speakers will be limited to 3 timed minutes. At this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker shall indulge in personal attacks while speaking. All comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of our students, speakers shall refrain from identifying specific students by name. Personal concerns may be addressed in writing to the superintendent or to the president of the Board of Education. And we have our clock today. Our first speaker this evening will be Charlie Maddox.
Dr. Means, school board, it's an honor to be here today, and as part of a promise that I made to a certain person that's on this board, I'm going to try to be here as often as I can. I thought of all the things I could say, but all of those students that came before said it all. The Board of Education, Athens, Clark County School, is about our children. It's about educating them and planting them and letting them blossom. I stand here, and it's almost deja vu all over again. Several years ago, more than I want to count, I stood here as this school where I went to high school, the school where I graduated, came kind of under attack. It was to be destroyed, to be demolished. It went from a high school that I proudly went to and graduated from, to a middle school, to an alternative school, and then it was going to be demolished. And I stood here and I spoke to people on this side of the board and pleaded and brought the case that this is an educational institution and it should be that. Well, I find myself again seeing that happening to another school that brought me here, which is West Broad School. Let me give you a little history. West Broad School is where I went to elementary school, 1961, I left to come here. But it's a school that I went through the first through the 8th grade. And it's a school that helped me to be who I am today, whatever people say. And then it pains me when I hear it referred to as West Broad Community Garden, West Broad this. Listening to the proposals and the affirmations and things that are being said about this, it is my desire, and I also represent the AHIS at the time of the school, Vernon Harris High School Alumni Association. And it's our desire that it remains an educational facility. I sat here and I listened to the proposals that were being presented, and it is my position and the position of the Alumni Association that West Broad Elementary School remain to be an educational facility. We, and when I say we, the Clark County School Board, the citizens of Athens, we have no land to dispose of. We need everything we got. We need that so that we can produce young men and women like we saw here today. At this time that we all be trying to get more resources and garner more resources that we can produce more, we need to look at that. The school board of Clark County, your charge are those kids. Your charge is to see that that's done. Education is your business, and as you go forth with it, I really hope and pray that you keep that in mind.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Brenda Bellinger.
Good evening, Dr. Mays, board members. I am the secretary, bookkeeper, office manager, grandma, great-grandma, counselor, advisor, chastiser, consoler at Barnard Shows Elementary School. Whatever else I need to be on that day. But I'm coming to you today as a parent and as a grandparent and a great-grandparent. My children are no longer in this district. But I would like to ask the board to please consider, when you're making decisions, please include the parents. Have a talk with them and let them know what's going on. Please meet with parents in your respective districts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll borrow that from Clint Eastwood. Utilize your resources in your respective districts, churches, synagogues, mosques, and community organizations. Don't be afraid to meet with parents. Can you really stand to get cussed out if you knock on the door and they don't want to hear it? What are you going to say to that? Because that happens at school. Parents should know their children need to be ready to learn and not be a distraction. Let parents know that all students must obey all rules and let them know the consequences of not obeying rules. Understand that some parents work multiple jobs and they are tired. Some children, you don't know what their home situation is, whether they got to sleep that night or what happened to them during the night. All of that needs to be considered when you make your decisions. Ask about what the bus drivers go through each day in your district. What happens on the bus? Do you know what happens on the bus? How many children are brought back, or do they have a good day? It's not a good idea, I said, to make decisions about students without including the parents. I will also tell you that a lot of children are unstable because they are enrolled, then they're withdrawn. They stay away for 6 weeks and then they come back. What do you say to that? Because they don't know what they're doing. They're children. They cannot help their situations. I would like to offer my services to this board. I'm pretty active in this community to help in any way I can to organize meetings or visits or whatever. And let me also say this. Sometimes you're going to have some pizza, hot dog, water, Coke, and cookies, or whatever is necessary. But you know what? That's okay too.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Bert Snells.
I'm just going to start with some of your short comment tonight. A couple of questions at the end. We'll start with a quote that I've thought about for the last 4 or 5 years since I first read it.
Sheldon Whitehouse in the US Senate. My experience in the education world is that there are really two worlds in it. One's a world of contracts and consultants, academics, experts, and plenty of officials at the federal, state, and local level. And the other is a world of principals, classroom teachers who are actually providing education to students. What I'm noticing from my principals and teachers world is that the footprint of that first world has become way too big in their lives to the point where it's inhibiting their ability to do the job they are entrusted to do. My only questions to the board tonight are pretty straightforward. Who's keeping track of all the new programs, initiatives, and consultants being introduced into CCSD? How much is it costing? Is this the best use of our finite resources to educate our children? I assume this must be ongoing as part of the school board's oversight. I hope so. But I think quite a few people are wondering if the constant adding of new programs and consultants from out of town and not necessarily responsive to educators' requests are helping to provide the best education possible for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mary P. Bagby.
Good evening.
I'm sorry I missed the meeting earlier. I had other meetings to go to. But I want to ask this board, ask it in particular because it was said that Ms. Berry was chosen over the rest of us because she not only walked the walk, but she talked it. And she walked it as well as talked it. But I want to know from all of the board members up here, how many of you have gone into your own communities? How many of you know any children in your community? How many doors have you walked up and knocked on in your own community and talked to the children? I have knocked on every door in Nellie. I have knocked on doors on Braswell Street. I have carried food, clothing, books in my entire community. I have knocked on doors on my street, on East Broad Street, the black people. I have college students that live in my neighborhood, and I give them food too. They are Caucasian because I care about the community. I do walk it and I talk it. And you board are a disgrace and a disappointment because you continue with your status quo, because you need someone that has a degree.
Ms. Bagby, we're not going to do any personal attacks tonight.
This is not a personal attack. This is a status quo. This is what you did. This is what you did. You broke protocol. You broke protocol, President Bobby. And the attorney, Mr. Pruitt, allowed it to continue. You broke protocol against me and the other candidate. And I'm verbally saying that the only way to right a wrong is to shine the light of truth on it. And I'll say to you, Mr. Worthy, as the whistleblower, you need to blow your whistle. And I'll say to Mr. Pruitt, you need to get your books out because there's a conspiracy to take over this board to steal land. There's a conflict of interest on this board. I'm saying it publicly. I'm making a declaration, a decree. That's what I'm doing. And I think the wrongs that have been done needs to be righted. And there needs to be no more corruption in this city with the Board of Education or any other boards. I stand boldly here in the name of Jesus, and all of you know about God.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. By way of reminder, there will be no personal attacks and all comments will be directed to the board in general. Please, thank you. And our final speaker will be Abigail Allen.
My name is Abigail Allen. I'm a varsity softball player at Clark Central High School. Our softball facilities are inequitable. We are here tonight to ask for the board's support in funding improvements to Clark Central's softball facility. And this is why. In 7th grade, there were tryouts for the softball team. All of my Little League teammates wanted to play softball for Clark Central. I remember seeing female athletes wearing their Letterman jackets, making me think about how excited I was to become a gladiator. First day of tryouts, I remember walking down to the field. I was thrilled to be there. The first thing I noticed were dips in the outfield. Every day we found something new. A 4x5-foot shack that was our score box. No running water to wash our hands. No bathrooms, and no concession stand to get ice. On the way home from tryouts, I drive by the baseball field. Their facility is noticeably better than ours. It started to make me think, why is it better? Are baseball players more valued? My initial thought was, well, this is Clark County. This is all they're going to do for us. Students from our own school and other visiting softball teams from other counties made fun of our field and facilities. As a softball team, we were embarrassed. We began making fun of ourselves to help deal with the embarrassment. For 3 years, I've played on this field. Embarrassed to be a female athlete. Embarrassed about the facilities and being part of the Clark County School District. This slowly turned into us becoming apathetic towards the whole situation. I had the opportunity to coach softball to young girls at Holland Park last year. Many of these girls will play at Clark Central. I do not want them to feel the way I do. We cannot be apathetic to this situation anymore. This facility and field will not determine our worth as female athletes in Clark County. We need equitable facilities now at Clark Central. We deserve a field to be proud of, a clean concession stand to raise money, bathrooms and running water to keep our team and visitors healthy. No female athlete deserves to play at this facility. As female Clark County athletes, we no longer accept this situation. We now have the parent and school support needed in order to make the change. I am now asking you, Clark County Board of Education, to give us the support we need to make this change. Support funding for equitable softball facilities at Clark Central High School. Why? Because we, the current and future female athletes at Clark Central, matter in Clark County too. Thank you.
And again, all of the board members are available by email or phone, and our address are on the website. We're happy to discuss with anyone any issues and concerns they might have, and Dr. Means' information is also available if you want to follow up on some of the things raised today. We will move on in our agenda to section E. These are information items. As part of our packet, we received and are available to the public on board docs a number of items. We received early Head Start Policy Council meeting minutes and reports. We received a SPLOST report, an Athens Community Career Academy report, and that's it. We didn't receive a parent advisory board report this time around. And those are, we discussed those briefly during our work session last week, and those are therefore for the public if you'd like to take a look at those information reports. Any additional information on those?
I do have one piece of information. I was gonna wait for my report, but in our SPLOS report, you will see that we continue to track in a positive. When SPLOS 5 was created, we estimated that there would be an intake of $1.85 million monthly. We've tracked well above $2 million since the SPLOS 5 process has started. And I think it's important to note that within the SPLOS 5 list of projects, there was a line item of $2.5 million set aside for high school athletic facilities. set aside for high school athletic facilities. Mr. Gilbert and I, who's our interim director of district services, met with our two high school principals and athletic directors and shared with them that it is our intention to bring forth to the board projects that they have prioritized at both high school campuses for renovation and upgrades. And in talking with Dr. Huff and Dr. Ward Ward's athletic director at Clark Central, Dr. Huff's principal, one of many projects that Clark Central intends to focus on is their softball field, which we're all concerned about. But there are other considerable issues that are at play at both high schools. I would note the tracks at both high schools need to be resurfaced immediately. There's a situation at Cedar Shoals where the former old gym, where now they use wrestling, it is also the visitors locker room is just really in bad shape. The athletic directors and the principals were charged with creating a prioritized list of items that they need to address at both of their high schools this past fall. And so they presented that to us. We intend to bring to you in the next few months recommendations to start the work on many of these projects. But I know that Dr. Ward had a chance to speak to the Booster Club at Clark Central just yesterday, and he made that announcement. But I wanted to make sure that there was a public announcement so that the entire board and the community would know that it is our true intention to move forward with some upgrades, pending your approval, of course. And again, it's funds that we've always earmarked for high school athletic upgrades. Candidly, I think what you heard this evening and some of the emails that you received over the last few weeks, they're accurate. They're right. We need to do some work for them and address some needs at both high schools in terms of facilities. The last thing I would say is that we did not want to have this work. We didn't go into this work from a cookie cutter approach of saying so each school will receive certain projects and attention. We left it up to the high school principal and the athletic director of both schools to prioritize what their needs were. And both those leaders, the principal and AD, worked with their coaches to identify what those coaches deemed as really important.
Great.
Since we're on this last report, I thought that the timing may be a little off, but
Yeah.
at least for the board and the community, you have it now.
Thank you for that. And I think as the board, I think we look forward to those recommendations when they're ready. Thank you very much.
I have a question. Do we have any set aside for middle schools?
So that will be the give and take. So the $2.5 million was supposed to address both the high schools and the middle schools. We prioritize the high schools as needing the $2.5 million. We're going to have to delay upgrades to athletic facilities at the middle schools until we can address these priorities at the high schools.
Great.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr.
Let me
Levy.
just sort of piggyback on what Dr. King said. Do know now, a number of the athletic programs, those activities will take place on the high school field. So it's sort of a split thing there.
Thank you.
I was just speaking to the concerns that we heard from a couple of middle schools, so as long as we know that they're still in the game, that's good.
Thank you. We will now move on to section F, which is our Board of Education Committee reports. Hearing first from the Finance Committee.
Don't have anything.
Okay. Government Relations Committee.
Well, I called both GSBA and GAE today at about 4, and as of that time, the SB 173 had been introduced that morning but the vote, and let me explain to the audience, SB 173 was a voucher bill, and it would have taken from public funds, beginning next year, $50 million, and then would have gone up over a 10-year period to where it would have been $500 million per year after 10 years. Taken out of public education and given to private schooling in whichever fashion that parents deem that appropriate for them. And then, of course, this was done without any consultation to speak of from educators, from administrators, from folks who have studied vouchers in other states. Dr. Means can certainly write a dissertation on the impact that vouchers had had in Wisconsin, where he worked for many years. So we're very pleased that SB 173, it did die in the Senate, or at least it was voted down. It never dies. That's one thing I've learned about legislation. It never dies. But 173 was voted down on Tuesday, 25 to 28. And so many of us worked since that time, contacting those who typically would have voted for the voucher, and asking them to hold firm. And also there were a few senators who had not voted at all, and they were contacted and encouraged not to vote in favor. And this was kind of a coalition of PTA, GAE, Georgia Education Association, PAGE, Professional Association of Georgia Educators, the Georgia School Board Association, the Superintendent's Organization, just about any organization who represents parents and teachers and students in the state of Georgia. And there's a similar bill that was introduced in the House, but it seems like currently that it's going to stay in committee. But this issue is never going to go away until there's a firm commitment among the powers that be in this state that public education needs to be fully funded, and that we need to put all the resources that this state has towards the educating of our children, because we have a long way to go. And one thing that we've learned, and there's one big piece of this that never gets talked about, is that children who do not have the advantages that many other children have, in other words, they grow up in very austere circumstances, they need extra resources to learn. And those resources currently, in the formulas that are being given, the monies that's given by the state and the formula used does not recognize that. A child in an upper middle class, a Coney home is educated for the same amount according to the state formula as a child that is growing up in LEB. And it's just that's not what equity is. And so that's what we want, what students need to learn, not just make sure everybody gets the same peanut butter sandwich. Other than that, just real quickly, with the permission of this board, and it doesn't really require a vote, but I did want to make it public. And then if there's any discussion that people have about me doing this, I got an email today from GAE asking if I would serve on the Governmental Operations Committee. And so I'm kind of putting that out for discussion. If there's any questions that we can talk, not, now and I guess will not be, well, if anybody has any questions about it, I sure will. But this is the group that will actually look at the policy of the Georgia School Board Association, their own legislative agendas. And this is one that I went to a meeting, last couple of years, pushing for certain, proposals for the, GAE, the Georgia School Board Association legislative agenda, to add. And last year we were successful adding one, and that was to make QBE index for inflation as one of the proposals coming out of the School Board Association. So we did make a difference already in terms of their legislative priorities. But I would like to serve in this capacity for this committee. And next month, what the Government Relations Committee will do is bring forward some policy proposals that we will, if this board approves, that we will then discuss at the GOC meeting on April 29th in Macon. And so that will be discussed in the April meeting. At the same time, at the April meeting, Dr. Gant has agreed to serve as our delegate to the summer convention. And so we need to vote on that in April, at the April meeting, as well as those proposed positions. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that GSBA is having we're having a district. We're in a district. There are 15 counties in District 11 of the Georgia School Board Association, and that's our district. And Vernon Payne served admirably in that position for many, 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 many years. Charles may know how many, but it was a long time. But with his resignation from the board, that left an open spot that is currently being temporarily filled by Tom Odom, who is the chair of the Oconee School Board. But there is going to be an election for that position on April 23rd. It's going to be at Dove Creek Elementary School in Statham. I wish every school board member would put that on their calendar. I think that we need to have someone in that position. You know, there will be an election, and it'll be one person, one vote. And so clearly, if we can turn out our board, that will be advantageous for someone who is running for that position. I would be interested in that position, but I'm not saying that it has to be me. I would like somebody on the board. I would like someone that will start meeting with other school boards. Because one of our issues in the Government Relations Committee is that we've done some really good work. And we meet monthly. We meet with our legislators. We do some good study. We do some good topics. We have good community input. But we're not able to branch out into these other boards. And that's what I would like the opportunity for this board to do, is to be in the position that we can structurally re-engage other board members in the legislative process. Because I think that SB 173 did that, because I know the Oconee School Board, each one of them contacted their legislators. And so they were very pleased that they were able to get all their 5 members to do that. But I think there are other boards around the District 11 that are not, they're just not up with what's going on. And so I think if we were in leadership of that, in this board, given how dynamic we are, I think we can have a good influence on the 15 school boards that are in our District 11. So anyway, that is April 23rd at 6 o'clock. So Thank you. I know it's a long report, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Worthing.
Yeah, Mr. Davis, and I know what I'm getting ready to say is important to do that. House Bill 301 and Senate Bill 173, and seemingly House Bill 109, so sidetrack, let's not forget that. They're trying tremendously hard to change the teacher retirement system, which I'm totally opposed to. And I'm opposed to it because they want to put it through 401k, which would be on the stock market. And if it passes, what's going to happen there, it will go into effect July 1, 2019. And I believe tomorrow is crossover day. Today, the 28th day of this session. And what happens there, they just flood these lawmakers with bills. And sometimes they just act like they've lost their minds to pass these bills. So hopefully, if it doesn't pass this time, Mr. Davis, let's put it on the agenda for the Government Relations Committee later this month, because we need to keep track of that.
Keep an eye on it, right?
And of all things, people, a retired middle school teacher out of Jefferson, Georgia, authored this bill.
Thank you.
Let me, if I can follow up, I know, but this stuff is important because we're in the middle of the legislative season, and Charles has raised an excellent point. The alterations to TRS, now the 401k piece, I had not read in the bill. It may have been added since, but what they were doing were that they were increasing retirement age from 60 to 62, and they were also increasing the amount, and this is as of, they were going to divide teachers. You get basically July 1 of 2019, you would need to be 62 to retire. Before the start date, before that, if you started in May of this year, then you could retire at 60. And they were also doing the same thing in terms of the amount that teachers would pay towards their retirement. It would go from, I think it's, I want to say currently teachers are paying about 5.5% or something. 6%. They were going to allow it to go up between 6 to 9%. And there were some other changes there too. And so you're exactly right, Mr. Worthy. This is a real affront. And I focus on this one bill because it's like you almost get double punched. You know, you get punched in the face and punched in the stomach, and I was focused on the face. But you're exactly right. We have to preserve TRS, and that will be front and center of the Government Relations Committee. Thanks for raising that.
Yeah, let me make this clear now. This won't affect teachers that are already retired. Not at all. It will affect teachers that are new to the profession if it passes July 1, 2019. But I have said this before. Georgia has the best retirement system in this country. The only state I believe that would come close to Georgia would be the state of Florida. I don't want to get into all of the details there. Thank you.
And also, we are in the middle of a teacher shortage too. So this is not, it's not even smart to do this when we need to attract people into the teaching profession. Thank you, sir.
One other thing, I keep thinking of things. As I said, a retired teacher authored this bill, Tommy Benton. Google him. Please Google him and read.
Thank you for the report and the comments following up. The next report, we'll hear from the Policy Committee.
Thank you. We don't have much to report. We have one policy that's out for review. Because of how our meetings have been crunched together, it's not coming to the board now because it hasn't been out for the full 4 weeks. Don, is that GBO? Yeah, so I encourage board members to look at it, the public to look at it, everybody to look at it online for policies for review. It'll come to us at the next board in 4 weeks.
Well narrated. Yes, fantastic. And Property Committee.
Yes, I'll say this. We met the 25th of last month. Can't go into details because we met in executive session, but I do believe sometime in the near future, some of the things that were discussed will be brought to the body.
Thank you. And as well as these standing committees for the school board members sit on a variety of committees out in the public. And so we'll just take a minute to hear reports from the different committees that we also serve on out in the public. The first one being the Athens Area Community Foundation.
I don't have a full report. I did meet with Sarah McKinney this morning to talk about the Athens Area Community Foundation and what they do and what the board representative role would be. The next board meeting is at the end of April.
Thank you. After that is we have a Community Oversight Committee, which we have not met since our last school board meeting, which is a meeting coming up next week. So that'll report there. And then we have Envision Athens.
So Envision Athens is still very busy. We are still very actively trying to engage the community and making sure that we reach the community. So the information that I passed out last time, or that I shared last time, is still valid. You can still go to the envisionathens.com website and look at the volunteer opportunities for the community. And it's a great site to share with newcomers to our area too, to get a sense of what's important in our community. We have a big event coming up in August. It's an anniversary event, and I just need to make a few corrections to our minutes because I don't think that was quite represented well, and I'll send that to you as opposed to spending time on that now. But we are still active. We have the four live committees, and we still have the opportunity. The community can engage at any point that you want to with these initiatives, especially if it's something that you have a passion about. You want to bring a skill to the table. All the committees are very anxious to have people connect and do work with us. It's our community.
Thank you. The next committee is the Foundation for Excellence in Public Education, and I have the privilege of serving on that committee. We met last week, and I emailed the board the nominations for the Foundation for Excellence. Gives a variety of awards to a variety of educators throughout the school district. And last week they received all final nominations for those awards. And so thank you for anyone who took the time to fill out and nominate someone. It's hopefully very quick and painless process to nominate someone. And the reality is that it is a fantastic way, a very, very small way to recognize the hard work that our educators do. So thank you for all of you who took the time to nominate someone for those awards. And finally, the Georgia School Board Association.
Other than the upcoming summer meeting?
Yes, that, Keisha, I don't know if you, for the dates of that, are the 7th and 8th of June.
Yep. Okay.
But we do have, but there is an application that we were sent that you would have to fill out, and I believe, and then we would also have to vote.
So that'll go, the way that'll work is in April, we will hear from the Government Relations Committee on any amendments to the GSBA legislative agenda. If we approve those changes to the legislative agenda, we'll select someone to represent those changes at a May meeting. And then,
well, that would be,
and then we will send Ms. Gant in June to the voting meeting where she will vote on behalf of our board.
Well, and again, I'm not really trying to promote more meetings for myself. I'm really not. So if somebody wanted to do this government operation, I got an invite from the government operation committee, which would automatically get me into the May meeting, and then I would have to go to Savannah in a different capacity than what Keisha would. And that was the confusion we had before, because Vern was doing both for a long time, and then Ovita began to see that there were actually 2 seats there.
Different roles.
Right, there are different roles there. So anyway, that's something we can talk about further at a later point. But we know we need to vote in the April meeting to have Keisha as our delegate and to get those proposals.
So board members should anticipate for our April work session, we'll hear from a recommendation from the Government Relations Committee on that legislative agenda.
Right.
We have, the next section of our agenda is minutes of previous meetings. We received minutes from a work session, February 4th, 2019. Any changes to those minutes? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
That last work session has made us.
You need a motion?
Yes, please.
I move that we approve the work session.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Davis. All in favor? Thank you. We also received minutes from our regular meeting, February 21st, 2019.
I move that we accept those minutes with minor editorial corrections.
And those are corrections that you sent to?
I will send.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. All in favor? Thank you. And the next section of our agenda is financial reports. Mr. Hammond.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Mead, staff, and participants in the audience. Tonight, we're going to cover the January 2019 financial statements, cash flow, and KPIs. What you see here is the financial statement for the assets and liabilities for January 2019. We currently have a cash balance of $63.7 million and a unreserved fund balance of $63.7 as well. If you go on to the next section, please. On revenue, currently we've collected 69.9% of our revenue on ad valorem. Please. I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. We've already collected 93% of ad valorem taxes. The majority of the funds that collect are QB funds and a little bit of the other category funds as well. But we are on pace to collect everything right now. On the expense side, we're at 47.1%, where we should be for the month of January, and I'll go more in detail on the cash flow. On the cash flow, what you're looking at is basically a document where everything in yellow is actual data and everything in blue is budgeted data. As you can see, right now we're projecting on a budget of $150.1 million for revenue that we're projecting to collect 150.9, which currently shows we're going to project collecting about $776,000 more than we had budgeted at this time. On the expense side, we have $151.3 million budgeted for expenditures. Currently, we're on pace for $150.7 million, which means we're underspending the budget by $715,000. If you take those two numbers into consideration, with the built-in budget deficit of 1.2 currently, that means that right now we're showing a potential surplus of $255,000. And then we go to the KPIs next, please. So the first two KPIs do a comparison between the current year and last year, 2018. So as you can see, the cash position this year is slightly ahead of where we were in 2018, and the fund balance is slightly ahead of where we were in 2018. The next two slides will show us collections for 19 of revenue and expenses paid for 19 versus where we were at 18. As you can see, currently in January, we're right at or slightly behind where we were collections for 2018, but we are on par to collect what we had budgeted for the current year. On the expense side, on the expense side, you can see we're slightly ahead where we paid last year. Part of the reason that we're showing we're ahead of last year is because of the big TRS increase we had in the budget for the current year, which was almost a 4% increase in what we're paying to the state for TRS contributions on behalf of employees. That's why we're slightly ahead, is because of that. The next two slides are income and revenue and expense paid. So as you can see, for the month of January 2019, we collected about $7.6 million, and the majority of the money was QBE funds, which are the funds we earned through the state. On the expense side, we spent about $13 million, and the largest chunk of that is instructions of 8.2. The next two slides, what we do here is we actually take a look at the actual black line, which is the budgeted line based on historical data for this budget year, on where we should be spending, both for expenditures and for revenue collection. The red line you're looking at is the amount we've actually collected. So as you can see, we're slightly ahead of where we thought we were going to be in the budget for collections. And if you look at the budget versus actual expenditures, we're exactly on par where we need to be. We're not spending too much, but we're spending exactly what we had planned to spend. Then if you go to the last KPI, this is just a graph that plots where we're projected to end if that was the last month of the year. So we started off with a balanced budget back in the beginning of the school year when it was adopted. As you can see, from July to August, we slightly dipped. We increased in September. We dipped again in October and November, and we recovered from that. And currently, that's January number there is showing where we're predicted to have a $255,000 surplus. Mr. Chairman, that is the financials for the month of January 2019.
Fantastic, thank you.
I just got a question. In terms of dips, is that because of the way that the ad valorem taxes roll in? Is that?
It's a combination of that, but it's also a combination that when we budget the cash flow document you looked at earlier, we're using historical data. So if something gets paid out of a month compared to previous months in the past, that could show an increase in expenses for one month that we hadn't planned for because it got paid either earlier or later than it was supposed to in previous years. So that's positive as well.
Thank you.
And when, Mr. Bybee, I think monthly, we're pleased with the report and we're pleased with the status. We're not in a position to identify where fund balance would be allocated if we end the fiscal year with fund balance, just in case if there is a question.
But there is a wish list out there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, alphabetical order, sir, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions? Chance?
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you there. Is there a motion to approve the financials?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knopf. Second. Second by Ms. Maddox. Over here.
I'm
Thank you
gonna
very
pass
much.
that. Carol wants the second.
No, that's fine.
Dr. Maddox, give us a second. Thank you. That's what happens when my head is started. All in favor? Thank you very much.
I'd like to also say, I really appreciate the KPI charts. I like pictures, they do a good job of helping decide what we're really looking at. Thank you.
I was wondering, we haven't spent as many years in America as Ms. Davis says, KPI is a key performance indicator. So it's our easy way of just keeping track of how well we're doing. And for those of us not as numbers literate as Larry is, it helps us kind of see trends along the way.
Thank you.
Moving on to section J of our agenda is our policy section, and as Dr. Knox mentioned in his committee report, we don't have any policies that we will be voting on tonight, neither to set out for public review nor to adopt. So we'll see those at our next meeting. Moving on to section K, our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Bybee. I will try to be brief. I spoke earlier about our athletic field work, and I'm excited about it. I think, as you heard from our student athletes here this evening, there's a pride level for a community when you invest in athletic fields. And I know Ms. Goodworth is really excited about having an opportunity to look at some of those projects. Also wanted to just bring to the board's and the community's attention on Thursday, March 28th at the Whitehead Annex. We'll have our second special education town hall parent town hall night. And it'll start at 6 p.m. and end at 7:30. I think Mr. Davis was able to attend.
What's the date?
So I put it, it's all in your communication, but thank you for the reminder for the community. Say it is Thursday, March 28th, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Whitehead Rural Annex. I want to thank Mr. Davis for being at the first town hall parent night for special education parents back in November, I believe it was. And Ms. Hill is going to have a second, so we're really excited about that opportunity. Wanted to share with the board, and I don't have, hopefully by our April meeting, I'll have more details. But you've heard the district talk a lot about a school-based health clinic. We've been in discussions with a major foundation in town to really take advantage of a large donation, up to $300,000. The foundation and their leader will be coming in to speak with Dr. Myers and myself and a couple other of our team on this coming Monday. I would say we're on the brink of being able to make a formal announcement that this grant will be given to us. If it is provided to the school district, it will cover the cost of us creating a school-based health clinic, which is really exciting. But it's going to even go beyond covering the cost of creating a school-based health clinic. This foundation is also, and I think these are some of the details we have to work through, but this foundation may even go as far as soliciting some of the medical equipment necessary for a school-based health clinic. So in kind, the donation overall may be well over a value of $300,000, which we're really excited about the prospect of bringing that type of partnership into the district. We're hoping to have formal word for you at our April board meeting. Speaking of partnerships, I'm very pleased to announce that the school district is working with North Georgia University to sponsor a summer enrichment program for 100 middle school students in Clark County. We're really excited about this. We're still North Georgia University. They're working through the final components of their flyer, and we'll have that ready for families and students right after spring break for teacher parent conferences. But from June 10th through the 28th, from 1 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. So there will be no Friday classes. So it's for a few weeks. It's from June 10th through June 28th. Students will be picked up here at the H.D. Edwards campus, taken over to the North Georgia University campus, and they will receive summer enrichment opportunities. Northeast Georgia have asked me, so what students do you want to hone in on? Part of our work with our smart systems training has been you should always, from a statistical standpoint, look at your greatest area of need. So I'm working with James Barlament and our principals to identify of all of our students in the organization, who of our students have the greatest area of need. I'm also working with individuals in the organization to see if we can try to extend that opportunity of learning prior to the 1 o'clock time frame. So the vision right now is if we can have the students come in at 10 o'clock, and from 10 to noon, we can feed them and have community mentors come in and not talk to them, but truly mentor them and show them, here's what you can be if you continue to focus. Now go to that college campus and get some summer enrichment. We're really excited about the possibility of what could happen here. So in the next few months, we'll be able to round this out a little bit more, but this has moved fast. There's been a lot of sponsorship and donations coming in to North Georgia University to make this happen. We're really excited that they reached out to us and said, do you want to collaborate and partner with us? I think this is going to be a great opportunity for 100 students who are middle school age. Speaking of partnerships again, on February 22nd, Dr. Myers, Claire Suggs, our Director of Social Emotional Learning, and our Director of Social Work had a chance to meet with Jim Johnson and the CEO and President of Communities and Schools for Georgia to talk about our ongoing partnership and our pivot and our focus of looking at the site coordinator model at the elementary school level. As it's been discussed in the community, we believe that our greatest area of need when you look at children in schools is Alps Road Elementary School and Gaines Elementary School. I was pleased to hear from Carol Lewis, the CEO of Communities and Schools for Georgia, where she cited that the site coordinator model is a K-12 model. So it's not a site specific or a certain level specific model, but it's K-12. And you can go all around the country and see that there are site coordinators at elementary schools and middle schools and obviously at high schools. But when you look at our needs, not only academically, but socially and emotionally, our greatest area of need, I believe, is to reinforce the foundation that kids are coming from. And so the communities and schools of Georgia have committed to coming back to Athens and making sure that when we start our investment as a school district in these site coordinators, that we're doing it with fidelity, that we're doing it in alignment with what the national focus and curriculum dictates for a good site coordinator, and to make sure that we truly measure what impact the site coordinator model is having. So I just wanted to share with you that there's some exciting things on the horizon with the communities and schools in that partnership. And then finally, in terms of partnerships, I want to introduce Mark Madison from the United Way. He's a good friend and has been the real leader of our Destination Imagination partnership with the United Way. He has some amazing data that he wants to share through our collaboration with the United Way and Destination Imagination. Mark?
Thank you, Dr. Means. Thank you, school board members, for letting us speak tonight. I really appreciate it. And echo the things that Dr. Means has been saying, work that he's done, work that James Baldwin has done to help us collect data and to do incredible work to find out just what have the efforts we put forward, the partnership with you all, what has it generated. So I'm Mark Madison. I get to be our Director of Community Impact at United Way of Northeast Georgia, and specifically I have the pleasure of operating our Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And the why of what we do at Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is because 85% of brain development happens from birth till the child turns 5 years old. We send free books to children from when they're born until they turn 5 years old. They receive a quality book in the mail each month until they turn 5. We were able to send that many books to 2,500 kids across this year currently. We've actually had over 10,000 children go through that program and finish through to 5 years old in the years we've operated this program in Clark County. And the thing that Dr. Means and Clark County School District were able to help us find out was just how well are our students doing. Of those 10,000 students that went through the program that received these books, what difference did it make? What was the change? And the incredible change that we were able to see that we never been able to get to the bottom of before until we had that partnership. We're so grateful for it is that children who received our books performed 10% better on reading evaluations when they entered kindergarten than students who did not receive our books. And even more impactful than that, students who received our books were twice as likely to be placed in gifted programs, in gifted courses, than children who did not receive our books. And just to echo the information that's already available in the summer review, that the general third grade reading level for students is 31%, but for gifted students, it's as high as 81%. So the greater likelihood of a child being placed in a gifted program could have in astronomical implications. We're just really thrilled with the potential that as we continue this partnership, we can actually see what is the result at third grade. Our sample size was a little bit over 1,000 children that actually had made it to that point, and we were able to say now we have twice as likely to be in gifted courses, and we have 10% better kindergarten readiness. But once we get to the place where a lot of those children have actually passed third grade, we'll have some really great numbers to share with you as well. We couldn't be more grateful for your partnership and Dr. Means and Mr. Parliament and his efforts have all put forth to allow us to share the impact of this incredible program, but also to support your teachers and your administration and the efforts they have, because when kids arrive at school ready to read and ready to learn, it makes the job just a little bit easier. So we appreciate it and thank you for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I guess the last thing I will share with you is that I completed I had 4 listening sessions that we had over the past week, and they've been extremely informative. I want to bring us back to this graphic, and I want to bring us back to this graphic every month if I can. This is the instructional core. It's what I call the instructional promise of our school system, because we, as we stated at the beginning of the school year, we have 2,288 days from when a child is a kindergartner to the end of their senior year of instructional time. And so every day counts. And we've had this conversation before, but the assumption that colleges of education are preparing teachers to handle the complexities of teaching in any classroom, let alone a classroom with the layer of complexity that our school system provides, is making a gross assumption. And so we believe that it's always important to have a systemic approach to how do you want to do the work? How do we want to educate children? And it should start with having some type of way, some type of framework where teachers know how to collaborate with one another around the data of the kids. So how are the kids performing? And how do you know if kids are growing or not? Because if you're not asking that question among your teacher team, then you're really you're operating in a tunnel and with blinders. If you're not analyzing the performance of students and checking to see if they're growing, and there are ways you can check students in their growth through easy things such as an exit ticket at the end of the class just to check to see if they're learning or not. But if you're not checking that analysis of performance on at least a weekly basis, how do you know if students are growing or not? We talk a lot about social emotional learning and how does that tie into this work. And then finally, there should be some expectation that when you go into a classroom, there are high leverage instructional practices being used. The research says that during the course of a class period, there should be at least 3 different instructional modes that students are being introduced to, where they're able to collaborate with their friends and their peers, they're able to get up and work with rich text, they're able to use technology. If you're not planning instruction in a way where there's constant and purposeful movement through instructional practices, then the classroom becomes a sit and get model. If you look at this graphic and consider this a plate, if you will, the plate that all of those different initiatives rest on is equity, especially in a district like ours, where 74% of all of our students are either Black or brown children. And it's necessary for us to identify and to make sure that we're addressing the equity needs in our district. And candidly, historically, there have been inequities and disproportionality that either we have acknowledged and said that's part of our culture, or we have not acknowledged in some cases, unfortunately. And so when people ask the question of where are we putting our professional learning efforts and attention toward, it's towards these areas. Because no one, as a former principal, I could never make an assumption that a teacher knows how to effectively collaborate with their colleagues around data. I cannot make an assumption that a teacher knows how to analyze data effectively. I can't assume that a teacher knows how to work with children, and in many cases, children who are coming from poverty and trauma. And I can't make the assumption that teachers understand what high leverage instructional practices look like. A high level, high functioning school district is one in which, in essence, you become a professional learning incubator for individuals and for teachers to learn their craft in a different way, and to do their work in a different way, and to provide opportunity for them to grow professionally, to grow their capacity. And so I share this with you to say that we are constantly focusing on how can we make sure that this work is being done and being done with fidelity. Because when you look at classrooms across our district, you have to ensure that the same level of instruction is being offered to all children. I think you've heard me say this before, and I'll conclude on this for members in this surviving community. But the one thing that does trouble me in my role is that I can't look a parent in the eye and say, it shouldn't matter what teacher your child is assigned to, you're gonna have a high quality experience. In many school districts across the country, what people do is they navigate the school system and I like to call it the soccer field conversation, where you use your social networking to figure out, so what class should I demand of my principal to ensure that my child is having a rich and vibrant educational experience. When you use an instructional framework like this, we're trying to grow the capacity of all teachers. So it shouldn't matter if you have social capital and know which teacher to ask for, because you shouldn't have to ask for a teacher. Every teacher should be working at this level of ensuring that a child is having a rich and vibrant educational experience. So that's the work we're involved in, that's the work that we're constantly doing, and we're doing it because of the urgency that we see in our data. We're not where we want to be based on our strategic plan. We're not based on where we want to be based on the fact that we know that those statistical points of academic achievement does open doors of access for children. And if we're not helping children, and that's why I'm glad Mark is here this evening, if we're not helping children enter school ready, that's why we need early childhood education. If we're not helping children becoming comfortable with rich texts, if we're not providing up-to-date materials the way that we have done this year, but because prior to my arrival, we had 7 different ELA curriculums in 14 elementary schools. Yes, I acknowledge that we have a lot happening in the district, but we have a lot happening in the district because there's a lot of work to be done. And our kids deserve that opportunity and support. And candidly, when you look at this instructional model, we're able to support the professional growth of teachers and principals with this as well. That's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President.
Good news in there, and we appreciate all the work that you put into that. Yes, Mr. Worthy, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Mays, I have a question and a comment. You sort of hit a nerve when you speaking over there for working teachers. And several years ago, I know with the PDS, professional development, the schools that were doing that, University of Georgia was involved in that, and they were teaching the course. This is my favorite course when I was going to undergrad school at Alabama State University, materials and methods of teaching. I say that because of what you said a few minutes ago, knowing how to analyze data, collaborating with other teachers, learning to work with other teachers, etc. Do we still have those PDS programs?
We are still a professional development school district. And Dean Spangler and her team are really, they're helping us out immensely in terms of finding areas where we can have a district-wide impact.
Do you know whether the materials and methods of teaching courses still being taught?
I'm not sure if I don't know what courses they're teaching in college with.
I was so impressed several years ago when those professors presented to this Board of Education, and I asked the same question that I asked a few minutes ago. What I was most impressed with, because the course was being taught on the campus, right there on the campus, where things that were being taught that those young people can see exactly how to put that in action. I was sitting here just thinking a few minutes ago, when I went out to do my student teaching a zillion years ago, I tell you, that's the course that helped me the most. I went back and shook that professor's hand, thanked that professor over and over and over. But anyway, I understand exactly what you're saying. I just had to make a comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Mr. Davis.
Yes, one thing Dr. Means, that you were talking about in terms of each classroom exposing, each child, regardless of what classroom they have a similar experience. I couldn't help but think about something that seems off the mark, but to me it's not, and that's when Tommy Farmer brought in an assignment that had been mimeographed and was so small that you couldn't read it, and that haunted me. I do have a question about our partnership. I'm very excited about the University of North Georgia partnership. Will they be taking our students to their campus? And if so, is it going to be Gainesville or Oconee?
Oconee, the Oconee campus, and they will be taking.
Okay.
Yes.
And do we know anything more about what activities our youth will be experiencing there, or is it still being fleshed out?
There will be 3 sessions. 2 will be academic enrichment. 1 will be a group building, social skills building. I always tend to stay away from this term, but I'll use it for, in this case, the soft skills development course. So there'll be 2 academic enrichment courses. That will be fun. I've been promised that they'll be fun. And then a soft skills course.
And my last question, is this going to be kind of be part of a web of summer experiences that our kids will have different groups, different places, different times, but is that what you're kind of putting together?
We have heard the board loud and clearly that we know that the summer dip is serious and real. The board has expressed concern to me that you want us to try to mitigate that as much as possible. This is the first step, and we're hoping to build more partnerships in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Yes, Dr. Mathis.
I'm excited about that, but also, we have a lot of community organizations local, and I'm still concerned that those organizations are continuously not brought to the table. And so I would like to see that conversation starts, because we have several churches who have educators who are working, several organizations. I had one, but, if it's a conflict of interest, no problem, but we have organizations who are working with the children who most need the help, and I believe that as a community that we should be valued, those organizations should be valued as well.
No doubt, and please don't take it as devaluing those community groups. In fact, Dr. Thomas and I met with Claire Suggs. We understand that we have to try to find a way to, for all intents and purposes, have a community organizer that can bring all of those people to the table to say, so what are you doing and how does the partnership mesh together? So please, I guess for community groups and individuals who are doing the work in our neighborhoods, it's not an issue of the district not wanting a partner. I think it's an issue, I think the terminology that we were using today in our meeting was bandwidth and identifying how do we now make the transition to having the bandwidth to pull in people and to have individuals who can go into the barbershops and go into the churches and say, so who is doing this work? So we understand that that's work that we need to do, and Ms. Suggs is focusing on it, along with a lot of other things. I think what we have identified is that when you create a position like community engagement and strategic partnerships, that's a big job. And it's going to take some time. So I would just ask the community and other leaders to be patient with us. That came out of my listening sessions of, so when are you going to partner with us? And it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be super organized and strategic. Let's just get to the table. I think that message has been delivered. We're trying to find ways to expedite that work.
Is it possible to have you doing business with the Clark County School District?
Say that one more
Doing
time.
business with the Clark County School District, so that would bring the organization, you might have to try to search the people, the ones who are interested within coming to the table.
I think I've charged Ms. Suggs to find a number of different ways of bringing individuals who are currently at the table or who are interested to come to the table. How do we solicit that work? And so that's work. We understand that we need to build some systems around it to solicit and to bring people to the table. Please watch this space. There'll be more development in the next couple of weeks.
Another thing is, in terms of the listening sessions, I have received emails and definitely on Facebook, on my page, there's some concerns about the language in the listening sessions around teachers. Will there be some type of report or an opportunity for, was it a survey
What was the concern?
that, that there's a continuous, language. I didn't get to see the, for some reason it didn't, I couldn't pull it up, and there's something that you handed out. And,
I didn't have anything.
you had anything else?
No, no.
Okay, well, there was some type of document, maybe someone in charge of something, I'm not sure. But I want to know, would there be an opportunity for?
What was the concern?
The concern was the language that you use.
What was the language?
Okay, I can say that we cannot have this kind of dialogue. I'm being patient, I'm asking you to be patient with me.
Okay.
Okay, so like you upset.
I'm not.
Okay. The language is like, that, it's everything is the teacher's fault. And I kind of heard that again tonight. The teachers, if they would have the classrooms and they would teach and they would have different strategies, but there's nothing said about the discipline. There's nothing said about the way that teachers have to come into the classrooms and the other parts of it, not the teaching parts, but the discipline parts, about the support parts when it comes to the principals, the leadership parts. So it's all about the teachers, and I think that's, I agree with that to some degree, but I just want to know, would it be an opportunity for surveys from those listening sessions? They're listening sessions, but what will come out of that? Would it be a report, would be what would come out?
I have a couple of things to say. I'm concerned that language is described as being concerning, and nothing has been shared with me. So that in itself is concerning for me to hear at a board meeting. I guess the language, and if you're making the parallel walk to the language was used here tonight as well. So when I shared the graphic and talked about the responsibility of teachers and what we expect in every classroom, I think the narrative of us, or if people want to point the finger and say, well, the superintendent is asking more of teachers, that's not blaming teachers, but that's a reality of the profession. I think the language that we used at all the listening sessions was that this is a very difficult job. And it's a difficult job wherever you are. And when you layer on top of it the complexities of our community, it's even that much more difficult. But we can't ignore the responsibility and the importance of a classroom teacher. That's not blaming anyone. The reality of it is, yes, there's going to be disciplinary issues that you have to address. There's going to be issues so when there were individuals who would say, and I've heard it when I walk through schools, well, where are the parents? How are the parents going to be involved? So I guess from a leadership perspective, I need direction, because I don't subscribe to a theory that we have to address the family first. I believe that I always want to look at what can we control. And I know what we can control is growing the professional capacity of the teachers. Now, if someone takes that as being concerning language, with all due respect, I disagree. I don't think that's concerning language in any way, shape, or form. I believe that's calling people to their professional responsibility. And when you work in a school district where 74% of the children are of color and they are poor, that's a higher level of responsibility you have to be a classroom teacher here. Do we want them to all behave as soon as they walk in the classroom? Yes. Do we all want them to have the level of literacy, knowledge that a child who comes from a two-parent home and a middle-class home has? Absolutely. But if you choose to sign a contract to work in the Clark County School District, you have to assume all children are not going to come to your classroom with those skills, and yet we expect you to teach at a high level. So I don't believe in excuses. I share that the sessions that excuses are the tools that are incompetent, that build broken bridges that lead to everywhere, or lead to nowhere, excuse me. And so I'm not interested in discussing what the challenges are. I like to call those opportunities. Now, if individuals want to say that that's concerning language, then I would, like I said, I respectfully disagree.
I just want to apologize. I got these messages last night after I spoken with you. It was very late. But I didn't really intend to bring it up, it just came up, that's because we discussed this, 3 moments ago. But I apologize if you feel that, I didn't bring that to you earlier.
Well, yeah.
Let me just say, I did get to attend a listening session, and I was, of course, always impressed at the level of clarity with which you convey that consistent message. But I was also very impressed with the parents that came out to share their input in that session too. And just, I don't know if it was any different for the others, but we had an on-the-spot survey, on-the-spot feedback immediately in the session. The last 15 minutes was devoted to collecting the information that you're describing. So Dr. Meeks has that information.
That's what I asked.
And so the question then from the people at that session was, are you going to share that? Well, I think he has the privilege and the right to synthesize that and bring that back to us in any manner that he sees fit. Because again, the idea was to listen to the parents in the community. And I actually had lunch with a parent that came. She's 4 months, maybe 5 months into as a resident of Athens Clark County. We met at one of the earlier sessions over at Oakmore, and so we kept the communication going. We had an awesome lunch, and she really was very proud of what she heard, what she saw, what she experienced in that meeting. And she came with, again, an attitude of wanting to help and wanting to engage. So I hope she will. Send her to the LSGT because she's going to pretty soon have some time on her hands. So I think she's an awesome example of that. But I saw at that meeting openness, I saw clarity. I heard every community member here in that meeting speak to that very positively during that session. So I'm concerned that we keep putting a narrative out there that may not have any legs, or we're trying to grow legs on something that really is long since dead. And again, so I don't think we can explain it away. I don't think if people are living by that single story definition of how they see the school system, they're not going to hear the other things that are happening, in my opinion. But that's just
I think this is correct. I apologize. Because unfortunately, there was a narrative that was started in this community. I submitted an op-ed in response to our milestone data in August that said that we're not satisfied with our results, but one thing we're not going to do is blame the children. The responsibility starts with the adults in the organization. That was spun, that has been twisted to be stated as the superintendent is blaming teachers for the work or for our results. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that if you choose, you make a conscious professional decision to work in the Clark County School District, and you pick the school, you have to make, you have to do some calculus as well. And the calculus can't be, well, I expect all the students to sit and listen to me immediately. That we want that on the front end. That may not happen. And so now, so what does that mean? Does that mean that the children should make the flip and the change? Does that mean that the adults should, the families who we say are working 2 jobs and they're in poverty, we can't have it both ways. If they're under that much trauma and poverty, then how do we also expect them to uplift families, their children away that middle class families will? There's a heavier responsibility for a classroom teacher in a community like this. That's not placing blame anywhere. That's just speaking reality. And I think we've done our due diligence since I've been here we have low class sizes in this district. But we can't continue to lower the class sizes because teachers may not have the ability to manage a class of 22 students. Because that's the feedback I'm receiving. So I have a class of 22 students or 23 students. I can't manage the class. So if you just lowered the class size to maybe 14, now maybe I can manage that in a different way. I think that's the narrative that has been perpetuated, unfortunately, in this community, this year. And it's disappointing because at the core, I'm used to school districts, school boards, and faculty saying, we are going to take the challenge of working with the children who are the most challenging, and we're going to still rise, and we're going to still reach great heights. Instead, I hear a lot of excuses sometimes from individuals who want to, unfortunately, in my opinion, pit the district and what we're trying to accomplish for children, pit us against this faculty. So I would say, Dr. Maddox, those listening sessions were extremely positive, and no one expressed concern, and they were very informative. But if people are concerned about the language, I will stand on what I have said. I do hold our staff to a high standard, and I do want them to understand that if you sign a professional contract to work as a classroom teacher in the Clark County School District, it's going to be hard work. It's going to be hard. It's going to be work that is harder than other. You're going to work harder more than likely than a teacher in Madison County. You're more likely going to work a level higher and a level more deeper in terms of the rigor of your work than someone who's working in Barrow County. But if teachers and principals and candidly friends of education don't understand that that's the complexity of our work, and they're taking it as being that's a concern or they're being blamed, I would respectfully disagree. And what I would also say is, while we're having this adult debate, who's suffering are the kids. So when I look at the data from Dr. Welch that says that 49% of all of the discipline is coming from 25% of the students, that means, do you mind showing that graphic again? That means someone doesn't understand the social emotional learning piece of working with African American males. I'm not blaming anyone. That's just, as they would say, that's just being very honest and real. And if you have children who are consistently not passing assessments all school year, and then we get to milestone time and we expect them to now be proficient, that means no one was doing data-driven collaboration. Or they weren't doing analysis of performance. If people are concerned about that language, then the premise in which the Board of Education asked me to come to Clark County, Georgia, to do the work of turning around the school system is in peril. Because I can't express enough that this is the work that we have to do. If people are going to take this work as saying, well, I'm being blamed for it and I don't have the professional capacity to grow in this space, then that means the kids, while we're waiting on individuals who are going to have that professional capacity, the kids are going to suffer. And I'm not going to stand for kids to suffer. And I'm not going to blame a single mom with 4, and I said this at one of the sessions, I'm not going to blame a single mom with 4 kids who's working 2 jobs and expect her to have the same level of involvement as a 2-parent home is going to have. I'm not going to hold that responsibility on that family. The one person that I do know who can live up to that work is the individual who receives compensation twice a month and receives health benefits for doing a professional job, and that's the classroom teacher.
I respect that, but I don't agree with all that. Not the teachers alone. I would never agree with all that. It's never the teachers alone. It's a bigger picture than that. I think that all parts need to be discussed, especially when it comes to the meeting. All parts, including parents, play their responsibilities in these children's lives.
We're gonna move on.
I have one rule
Further
that
in
I
our agenda.
very brief.
Okay, I'd like our comments to be constructive and our comments to be building on our agenda.
My comments gonna be Charles Worthy's comments. Now,
We'll be
I was listening very close to what Dr. Means said. Dr. Maddox Are you familiar with the TEAS and LEAS, the evaluation instruments?
I have read it, I'm not a teacher, but yes, I am familiar with it.
Okay, now, TEAS for teachers, talking about blaming, that's exactly what the governor, the outgoing governor, that's exactly what state legislatures were doing, State Board of Education and the State Board of Education. That's exactly what they were doing. Quickly, examples. Evaluated so many times, and you didn't come up to what they expected on that instrument. Okay. The pay raise that are coming up, which has been cut for the teachers, $2,775. You won't get that pay raise. Now, your test scores didn't come up hard. Then, of course, after so many years that happened, you're out the door. Clark County School District, and obviously I was on this board, we decided to try to come up with our own instrument. But what you think the governor, state legislators, and all those people were doing? Blaming the teachers, which I always opposed that. As a high school principal, I told teachers, if you close that door between those four walls, I won't action. Because one last statement, Mr. President, we hired Dr. Means, as he said, the turnaround person, okay? And when superintendents are hired in school districts, they are hired to increase student achievement. That's what it's all about.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy.
Real quick, I want to spin more kind of a positive twist. Dr. Meeks, I know that we had a concern about the science scores at our high schools at the end of the first semester. Do you get the sense that from your visiting schools and meeting with teachers and everything, do you think that they're grappling with that there's movement forward? What's your sense? I'm kind of giving you. I'm trying to get a sense of that we're kind of pulling forward. Kind of like getting our wagon out of the rut.
No. I haven't seen a drastic change in instructional strategies. Candidly, I don't know where. I think our principals are still on a spectrum of knowing how to monitor performance of their entire schools and doing this work and leading this work. I think the value of the listening sessions was that teachers said, we understand. So the vast majority of teachers said, we hear you. We want to do the work that's on the screen. Can you help us with the discipline issue? Can you help us with helping kids who are in trauma? And I said, sure, yep. And so Dr. Myers and the rest of our team, Mr. Hamill, we have been talking about, so how do we deploy as much social, emotional learning personnel as we can and present it to the board in the fiscal year 20 budget. And that's our plan. I've asked Dr. Myers to go to her director of counseling, of social work, of psychology, of school nursing. And I said, so how much personnel do you need? How much do you need so then the issue of behavior, discipline, attendance, all those things can be addressed. So for example, there was a teacher at Classic City who said, we have attendance issues. And part of that conversation, I was pleased to be able to say, and we met with Principal Daniel, and we suggested that they should hire a social worker, a full-time social worker at that school for next year. So our plan is to present to you in a few weeks a comprehensive deployment of counselors and social workers and behavioral specialists. But here's the caveat. Once we make that presentation, and if you approve it, then people have to teach. Right. Then it can't be about, well, what about those kids with trauma? Or what about no. We went to the experts and they said, here's how much we need to have in order to do our jobs, to support the schools. And so our behavioral specialists have said, we may need 2 or 3 more behavioral specialists. But if we have 2 or 3 more, we can cover the needs of our students. Our social workers are saying if we have 2 more social workers, we can cover the needs of our students. There's a goal that we have of saying if we can get to a 290-to-1 ratio with counselor to students, the counselors and everyone is saying we can do our work. And if there's a student in the class who's not paying attention or they're wandering off in other areas, then let's get that student to the counselor. Let's make sure all those services are in place, and then we have to teach. Because when it's all said and done, the issue that's in front of Richard Milner says that he's a researcher, and we're working with him on equity issues. The research shows that if you have a high quality teacher, that's the one determining factor that can outweigh poverty, that can outweigh all the different factors that are coming from the outside. It's a high quality teacher. And that's really hard work. And that's why we want to provide the highest level of professional learning and capacity, because I don't make the assumption that just because someone graduated from a college of ed from any university, that they're prepared to face the challenges of what we provide in the classroom in any school in Clark County. And so, yes, I'm deeply concerned that 65% of all the kids who took biology at one of our high schools were failing. That's troubling. And to me, what I would like to see and I think our staff understands it to a certain extent. I think our principals understand it to a certain extent. I think the community may understand it to a certain extent, is we're in crisis. And so while we continue to have these philosophical discussions around, so what's the best pathway? What's happening at the core, while all of these adults are pontificating, kids are falling each year behind. We always are really pleased to have these kids come to our sessions, and Dr. Thomas and Ms. Wickwire have all these certificates and we pass them out. That is a small percentage of the 14,000 students who we serve in this district. And so it is and the work that you see up here isn't something that has been slapped together, it's research-based. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think the first step in the work is to understand, here's your level of responsibility. I think part of my responsibility is to listen. And from what I've heard from staff and the community is, we need help in social emotional learning. Okay, we can provide that help. But then there will be a moment where we have to say, if the help is there, so now what does the instruction look like? So now we can't say, yeah, but. It has to be yes. And I'm prepared to be the very best instructor I can be. And that means I may have to stretch myself.
I support that budget.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Gant, brief comments and then we'll move on to our agenda.
Dr. Hayes, I was going to ask, how much of this do you feel is sort of reimagining, in addition to what happens at the teacher level? Because I do believe that there is a great responsibility in the classroom with the adult that's in the classroom. Just like as a parent, at my house, there's a great deal of responsibility, but the systems also work together. And so, and the adults and the different roles work together. So I'm wondering, how much of this do you believe is also about reimagining how we do leadership? Like I know there's a building capacity of the teacher, and then in my head, I'm thinking, I know last week we talked a bit, maybe the week before last, just about like leadership and how some principals were looking at some of the data that we looked at. So, how much of that do you feel is also a leadership issue? Because once we get those support people, like 10 new counselors or more behavior specialists, and they enter back into the system, i.e. a school that has a culture that may be actually helping produce something about the culture in addition to the teacher, or maybe with exception, it could be a leadership issue. So how much of this is also about reimagining leadership and building capacity there?
It's critical. And I've shared with the principals, I'm holding them responsible. Because if they're not monitoring and driving, and I've used the word driving purposefully, if they're not driving school improvement on a daily basis, then it'll never catch traction. I'll be candid with you. I think because I think it's a message that the community sends to our principals. I think they're really focused more on day-to-day management and operations of the school versus being instructional leaders. And if they're not approaching their work as being instructional leaders with a strong lens towards the love and compassion of kids through that SEL lens, then we may want to turn around the schools. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. And so, yes, if people feel that I'm holding, and I guess the other thing I would say is I'm not holding anyone to a level of responsibility that I'm not holding myself to. I hold myself to a high level of responsibility, but I'm also holding everyone to a high level of responsibility. So Dr. Gann, I have expressed to our principals that the first 2 years I've been trying to grow their capacity. And one of the principals, and so that's why we've brought in individuals to work with our principals. One of the principals now have a saying with me where they say, when you know better, you do better. And when they first said that to me, I kind of twisted my head, and they went on to say, we didn't know. The things that you're bringing to us and that you're expecting us to do, we weren't aware of it. Now we are. And I've taken the approach of, I didn't come in and immediately expect that they were going to do the work. I wanted to take 2 years to say, let's build your capacity. Let's grow your capacity. But in the third year, it's time to expect. Because again, the kids can't wait. So no, I think, and I want the board and the community to know, I do hold, the principals are critical, and I hold them to a high standard. And so I've shared with our principals, it's unacceptable. It is unacceptable that you are unaware of the instructional strategies that are being used in your classroom. It's unacceptable for you to have a level of failure in classrooms and you're not pushing into those classrooms to observe it. And that's why I think the listening sessions have been very helpful, because the pushback I've received from principals and teachers have been, yes, but I have a student who's out of control, I can't get there. Okay, we'll get more behavioral specialists on board. Okay, we'll get more counselors. We'll get the staff that's needed to allow you to address the instructional leadership work that you need to do. I think we collect, that's what I mean by that, but the community has to start holding the organization and the professionals to a higher standard. It can't be, yes, but those kids. And that's the message that I hear, that people are saying, yes, but those kids are poor, or yes, but those kids don't have parents who are involved. Yes, but those kids are traumatized. I believe that a poor child of color who is traumatized can still learn if they have an amazing principal and they have an amazing instructional leader in the classroom. They can still learn. Now, that doesn't ignore the other things that they're bringing to the table. I'm not ignoring those issues at all, but I want us to stay focused and keep a narrow focus on what our job is. And our job is to move the needle. And it's not to move the needle because we want data to move. Behind every data point, there's a kid who is either accessing the American dream or they are being shut out. And so when we see thousands of kids
to make those things happen, principals have expectations of their teachers and all the support to make those things happen. Our superintendent and his staff high expectations of those leaders, those school leaders, and all the support to make those things happen. As a school board, high expectations of our superintendent and all the support to make those things happen. And then the public needs to have high expectations of us, the school board, and all the support to make those things happen. And then once we have those things all the way, that trickles all the way down, that's when the magic, can happen. And I know we call this thing the superintendent program. You have a dedicated force behind you to make all these things happen. And on behalf of the board, the work and dedication of your staff and your people is extraordinary. And it's our privilege to have them as part of Clark County School District. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is our consent agenda items. We have some field trips and furniture purchase to be part of our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Mr. Woody?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Davis. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We have no other agenda items under M. Under personnel recommendations, the first item is some difference in job descriptions. Dr. Means, would you like to provide some context there? For the recommendation?
Yes, sir. There's a total of 4 recommendations. The first recommendation is to move the executive director of elementary education into, ironically, based on our conversation we just had, into an executive director of leadership development. Someone who's going to focus on ensuring principals are growing their schools. The second recommendation is to change the executive director of secondary education to a position of executive director of talent management and organizational development, again, to support this work. The third suggestion is to create an executive director of innovation strategy. This position would allow certain departments that really go without a leader to have a leader. Those departments include Title I, ESOL, Office of Early Learning. It includes all of these different ancillary curricular support systems that really, gifted and talented would be another area. These are areas that just don't have any support, and they have to push in to meet with an administrator, and so there's no direction. And so you have an executive director of innovation strategy, you have someone who's watching those things and ensuring that all of those services are being done well. And then the last position, thank you, is the Director of Research and Impact. And I think we had the conversation last week that Mr. Barlowman, who is doing good work, does not hold a teaching license. The state of Georgia requires that an executive director of assessment and accountability should have a teaching license. And so this would create a position still for Mr. Barlowman in the organization, and allow us to go and find someone with a teaching license and teaching experience in K-12. So.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to approve these new job descriptions?
Sorry, do we have discussion before?
Right after we give a second,
Okay.
yeah, we will. Mr. Davis, go ahead. Moved by Mr. Davis, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Worthy, questions or comments?
So I had a question / comment. For the Director of Research and Impact job description, we obviously have been hearing a lot about the importance of data and the strong focus of data, and the decisions in the district are being made based on data. And looking through this job description and the essential functions of this person, and then looking at so for example, making decisions about research and analytic design choices with minimal guidance, implementing a variety of evaluation methodologies across diverse contexts, and attention to scope and utility of a given method. The functions of this person are doing all the things that we want to be done with the data. But then when you go to the requirements, I felt that the requirements for a person in this role should be increased, and to show that we are really needing a person in this role with expertise in data analysis, because because that is what their job will be. So I felt like the requirements should be more than what they are here with specific, with a requirement that shows that they have had experience doing this type of work and experience with statistics and data.
Dr. Reed's thoughts on how we're going to find the right person to be able to execute well on this job?
I think let me start with Dr. Dykeman's recommendations. I think we can make changes that emphasize a background in statistics and a foundation in statistics. So I think that's really good feedback. I think we have individuals on staff currently. I think all of these positions, we don't have to look far. We have people in our organization who can do these jobs. Actually, I think it's going to help people refine what they're supposed to do and keep them focused. I think right now we're trying to do too much. And I think that frantic feel that everyone has in the organization trickles down to everyone. If there's someone who's focused on developing principles and holding principals responsible, that's work that's happening. If there's someone who's responsible for ensuring that our gifted program is the best it can be, and ESOL is the best it can be, and the Office of Early Learning actually has a conduit. Karen, I've watched her over 2 years now. She has to push in instead of someone coming and supporting her. And so we really believe in early learning. There should be someone who's supporting her through that position. I think we have people on staff who can do amazing jobs if they have the chance to focus.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So I think I heard correctly that you want to have more rigor in terms of the technical skills in doing this job versus that expertise already being resident.
I think I think there's some individuals in the state that's on staff who could do the job, but if we increase the rigor of the job description, it will give us the ability to say we expect your capacity to grow even more. I think what I'm hearing from Dr. Dykeman is let's set the ceiling even higher with that job description to allow that person to do some professional learning and stretch themselves even more.
So what I'm careful about is, we have this one position that is focused clearly on just the data and the statistics and the analysis. So if that person has that level of expertise and we're kind of investing in that person to do that work, it allows that person who's working with the people responsible for getting the job done more flexibility and serving their needs. So I don't think it's not something I want to debate or argue about, but I just think that we have the rigor on staff. If we have that skill set already, then I wouldn't want to turn this person into a second statistician to.
But I thought that was what that job was. That's the job I'm talking about. I'm talking about the director of research.
Okay.
That's the position I think is a really good suggestion.
So I'm not reading that.
That's it.
Any other questions for Dr. Reeds on these changes?
So, was that an amendment?
No. This is something that, and it is in Dr. Means's prerogative to make recommendations for the positions that he wants to hire for. And I think he's heard feedback.
I think the amendment that Dr. Dykeman put on the floor, I think the directive has been to increase the rigor on the professional requirements for the Director of Research and Impact. Duly noted, we can make those changes per the direction.
And as a matter of procedure, it's not an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. I wasn't sure which one you were asking.
I was asking about Carol stuff.
Yeah. And I don't think you intended to make a motion an amendment to the motion on the floor. Okay.
I don't know how that works.
That's fine.
I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Any concern for that, Dr. Knox? Love to hear it.
I will take that as directive with permission of the board to increase the rigor per the directive from Dr. Dykeman. I appreciate the feedback, and valuable.
Third time's the charm with that.
Yes. We have a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. We also received a list of personnel recommendations to be approved by the board.
This is many of this is very pedestrian in terms of what's on the list. Don't have much else to say, but the list is pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the personnel recommendations?
Yes. I move that we approve the personnel recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there a second? Thank you, Dr. Dyken. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We also received a contract list for the board of 2019-2020.
I think the contract letter will go out tomorrow. Upon your pending approval, contracts will go out tomorrow, and this allows us to start staffing. It also allows us to know and figure out where do we need to do more hiring.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the contract list for 2019-2020? Yes, Mr. Davis. So moved. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy.
I do have a question.
Question?
And I should know this, but I'm used to being the profession, I guess, but, when people, we organize it by school, but that is not necessarily, particularly the leadership, that doesn't tie them to that particular school, right? It's just a way of organizing. In fact, that's the same with any position, right?
It is so great question. Yes. So the way that this current list plays out, it does not lock in a person to that assignment to start the 2019-2020 school year.
It's just an organizational
It just allows us to know that we are placing this person on contract. It does not assign them to that specific location.
All employment contract states as assigned.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much, unanimous.
Mr. Bybee, I just have one. The board asked that we provide some level of HR update every month. And so I think Dr. Knox and Mr. Worthy would be pleased to know, they may be pleased to know, I'm not quite sure, that Lynn Duke and Mr. Harris went to the University of Alabama yesterday to recruit. And the recruiting effort was actually very fruitful. We also want to just share with you strategies that we're actually using. And so Ms. Duke was able to recruit a candidate that fits the profile that the board has been asking for us to pursue. Mr. Worthy, I hope that meets your standard for not talking about certain things.
I'm a Georgia Bulldog.
Yes, sir. And we literally, Ms. Duke and I literally called that candidate today. Ms. Duke went on to invite that candidate to Clark County next week to tour the community and see the schools. Ms. Duke actually read some, she's been reading some literature that says that in the world of HR now, we have to start recruiting candidates the way that colleges recruit 12th grade seniors, or how colleges recruit student athletes to come to their campuses. And so we're going to ratchet things up. And so it was exciting to make that call to the candidate today, and we're looking forward to meeting her on Monday. And then the last thing I would share with you is Saturday, March 23rd is our job fair. We're really excited about that job fair.
I have to comment on that. Yes, that's how it's called out. Make sure you recruit at UAB and also Alabama State, not just Tuscaloosa. That you get a more diverse pool for either of those.
Before we vote, I did have a question from HR perspective.
We already voted here.
Oh my God, so I got a question anyway. I know that one of our, a couple of our compass classes, as of a couple of weeks ago, were equal short of a staff member. And my understanding, has that been, are we still, and I know that Lynn's working very hard recruiting and everything like that, but is that something that we're still trying to solve before as soon as possible and not wait until next year?
Yes. We understand that there's a staffing challenge in our compass classrooms. For those of you who are following us online or board members, I think you all know that compass classrooms are where our special needs students at the elementary level who have severe needs are located, and that program is placed at Winterville Elementary School. And we've had some challenges throughout the year of keeping that program staffed. It was interesting at the listening session earlier this week. Someone made a suggestion: can you provide an incentive pay for teachers in positions like Compass? And I think that's something that we can. I think that's the value of those listening sessions. I think that's something that we can definitely explore.
I'm ready to vote now, but.
Vote again. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is an executive session. Dr. Museum, a recommendation for.
I do. I recommend that the Board of Education go into executive session for the purpose of discussing HR practices.
It's my understanding that you anticipate a relatively brief executive session.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic.
President, Mr. Chairman, you can't discuss policy and practice in executive session.
The employment, compensation, hiring, dismissal, or evaluation of employees. Does it fit that? Does it fit that? Okay. Fantastic.
Well, practicing, you can't discuss practices. That's what, if you read the legal opinions and attorney general opinions, tell you what that language means. It means specific people for specific personalities. Their hiring, evaluation, compensation. It does, for example, you cannot go in executive session and discuss the all employees, not just one person.
It is for one person.
Okay. Great, thank you. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Ms. Davis, thank you very much. Is there a second? Mr. Worthy? All in favor? Okay. Thank you. If you hustle in there, we can be brief and be